ever have one of those mornings where everything feels calm until the universe decides to test your patience? Yeah, that was my Saturday. The coffee was still warm in my hand when my phone buzzed. Dispatch calling. "Officer Daniels," the voice said. "We got a noise complaint from Oak Ridge Estates. Caller says some guy's building something without HOA approval." I almost laughed. Oak Ridge Estates, that's my neighborhood, and I knew exactly who the caller was before I even asked. "Was it Mrs. Patterson again?" I said, rubbing my temple. Yeah," dispatch replied. "She said he's putting up a shed. Says it's a violation. Wants officers on scene immediately." I sighed. Mrs. Patterson, or as everyone called her, the HOA Karen. She was the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood. If your grass was an inch too tall, she'd call the HOA. If you parked facing the wrong way, she'd snap photos for evidence. And today, she'd called the cops. On me. See, I just bought a small prefabricated shed for my backyard. Nothing fancy. Just a place to store tools and my old lawnmower. I'd been off duty for a week and thought, hey, I'll finally build that thing. But apparently, hammering at 10 a.m. on a Saturday was a threat to suburban peace. I stared at my reflection in the coffee pot, debating whether to even go. But the irony of it all made me grin. "Dispatch," I said. "I'll take that call." There was a pause. You sure?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I know the guy she's talking about." When I pulled up to my own house, in full uniform, patrol car and all, Mrs. Patterson was already waiting on the sidewalk, arms crossed like she was guarding Buckingham Palace. Her eyes widened when she saw me step out. "Officer," she started, her tone sharp. "Finally, someone needs to deal with this man. He's been hammering and drilling all morning. Total disregard for community guidelines." I closed the car door slowly, my badge glinting in the sunlight. "Morning, Mrs. Patterson," I said. "Good to see you." She blinked, confused. Do you live here?" I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. This is my house." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I could feel the neighbors peeking through their blinds. The silence was delicious. "Well," I said, glancing at my half-built shed, "I heard there was a noise complaint. So, I came to investigate." Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. I didn't realize—" "Ma'am," I interrupted gently, "next time, maybe just knock on the door before calling the police. I promise, I'm friendly off-duty too." She stammered something about rules and guidelines, but I just smiled, tipped my hat, and walked toward the shed. The irony hit me like a punchline. The cop she called? Yeah, it was me. But little did I know that was just the start of it. You'd think that moment would have ended the drama, right? Wrong, because when pride gets bruised, some people double down instead of backing off. By Monday morning, I woke up to an email from the HOA. Subject line, urgent, code violation notice. And guess whose name was at the bottom? Yep, Mrs. Patterson. Apparently, she'd filed a formal complaint that my shed violated aesthetic harmony standards, whatever that meant. I tried to let it go. I really did. But after my shift, I came home to find her snapping photos of my backyard through my fence slats. That was it. I walked outside, calm but firm. "Afternoon, Mrs. Patterson," I said. "Can I help you with something?" She didn't even flinch. "You're violating the HOA code." "Officer Daniels," she said, stressing officer like it was an insult. "The color of that shed is not on the approved list. You need to remove it immediately." I took a deep breath. "Ma'am, I painted it the same color as my house." "It doesn't match the tone palette," she shot back. Page 7, paragraph 2. Her eyes were cold, but behind them, I saw something else, and something tired, brittle. I softened my tone. "Look, Mrs. Patterson, I get that you care about the neighborhood, but maybe there's a better way to handle things than—" "Rules are rules," she snapped, cutting me off. "If we start bending them for one person, this whole community falls apart." Her voice trembled, though. Not with anger, with something deeper. That night I sat on my porch thinking about her words. I'd spent years enforcing laws, real ones, and I knew the difference between order and control. One protects people, the other cages them. A week later I was off duty again, washing my car in the driveway, when I heard a faint thud and a cry. I turned. Mrs. Patterson was lying face first on her lawn, motionless. "Mrs. Patterson!" I ran to her, kneeling down. She'd slipped on wet grass. Her ankle was twisted and she was shaking. Don't move, I said, radioing for EMS. You're gonna be okay. She looked at me, eyes wide and teary. Why are you helping me? She whispered. After how I treated you? I smiled gently. Because that's what neighbors do, ma'am. When the paramedics arrived, I stayed until they lifted her into the ambulance. She kept glancing back at me like she couldn't quite process it. That night, I found a note taped to my door. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. I'm sorry for calling the cops. I've been alone since my husband passed. The HOA is all I had left to feel in control. Thank you for reminding me what kindness looks like. I stared at it for a long time. Sometimes, the people who cause the most chaos are just the ones hurting the mostly. It had been 3 weeks since the fall. The neighborhood had gone quiet. No emails, no complaints, no photos through fences. Just silence. One Saturday morning, as I was finishing my coffee, I saw a figure hobbling down the sidewalk with a cane and a small box in her hand. Mrs. Patterson. I walked out to meet her halfway. Morning, ma'am, I said with a smile. You're getting around better. She chuckled softly. Doctor says I'll be fine, just a little slower these days. She held out the box. I wanted to bring you something. Inside was a coffee mug that read, Best Neighbor Award. Corny, sure, but it hit harder than I expected. I looked up, and for the first time, she wasn't the HOA enforcer. She was just a lonely old woman trying to make amends. I realized, she said quietly. I've spent years policing people instead of knowing them. My husband used to say rules keep you safe, but I think I took that too far after he passed. I nodded. Sometimes we build walls to feel safe, I said, but all they really do is keep people out. She smiled faintly. You sound like him. From that day, things changed. Mrs. Patterson, or Eleanor, as she asked me to call her, started showing up at neighborhood events. She baked cookies for the block party. She even laughed, really laughed, for the first time since anyone could remember. And when people complained about HOA rules, she'd just shake her head and say, Trust me, it's not worth the fight. Go talk to your neighbor instead. One evening, a few months later, I was grilling on my porch when Eleanor shuffled over with her cane. You know, she said, I tell everyone that story now, about how I called the cops on my own officer. I laughed. Doesn't make you look too good in that one, huh? Oh, it makes me look awful, she said, smiling. But it makes you look like hope. She paused, eyes glistening in the sunset. Thank you for showing me what real community means. A few months later, when Eleanor passed away quietly in her sleep, the HOA sent a letter. For the first time ever, it wasn't about violations or codes. It announced that the small park by the entrance of Oak Ridge Estates would be renamed Eleanor's Garden, in memory of a neighbor who found peace through kindness. At the dedication, I stood in uniform again. Same badge, same house, same street. But everything felt different. Because one act of patience, one moment of grace, had changed not just 2 people, but a whole neighborhood. I looked around at the faces, the laughter, the unity that had replaced the tension. And I thought, sometimes the best kind of justice isn't enforcing the rules, it's rewriting them with kindness. If this story hit you, remember, every Karen has a story you don't know. Sometimes all it takes is kindness to turn an enemy into a neighbor. So go check on yours today.